Hello and welcome. We're going to do an interview with AJ today from Growing Organic, and we're also going to do a little bit of an FAQ from the YouTube series. So we'll cover a little bit of ground today, but mostly we're going to talk about his business, their products, and for those of you that don't know, in season 1, AJ came in for a brief bit and helped out with the grow when I was out of town. And it goes even further than that. AJ actually used to work here, and now he runs Growing Organic with his wife, Rebecca. They've got a very successful business, seen a lot of growth in the last couple of years. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to talk to him on camera a little bit. All of you have asked, get him on camera more, let's talk to AJ. And it's no surprise to me. If you don't know, he won the Home Growers Cup. He used to work for BuildASoil, and literally he found us because he already had this as a passion. And they'd actually already started, him and his wife Rebecca, had already started Growing Organic before he came to work here. So it's been a long time coming, and I really am glad to have him on here today, discuss some of these products, about ferments and about his business. So AJ, thanks for coming down, man.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's
stoked.
We used to ship right here out of this area. It wasn't really a retail store, and before that we were making soil in here. So not only has BuildASoil grown a lot while I've been working with AJ, friends with AJ, but his business has now grown a lot, and it's really cool to see. I think they built a new warehouse this year.
Yep. Yeah.
Bring me up to speed. What's been going on this last year or two?
So, well, yeah, I mean, I left here September of last year, so just over a year ago. We were super lucky to, we 3X'd our business from 2020 to 2021, which is great. It comes with some pains, but we got the new building up, 1,500 square feet, insulated, heated, got it ready to go. So that's been instrumental in us being able to keep up with the demand.
These are all handmade products.
Yeah.
So the warehouse was on their own property.
Yep.
Total mom and pop business, so they can continue to hand make the products instead of outsourcing.
Yep.
So I was really happy to see it happen. We needed more space at the same time, and I know how stressful that gets.
Yeah.
To do construction in the middle of all the shit that's been going on.
Well, and it's been nice too, because you guys, BuildASoil grew a little before us, and I was able to be in the mix here. So it was kind of like being able to be here and see all the changes that you've had to go through and implement has made it easier on our end, as far as like, hey, I know that this is coming up, or I know, what to expect and how to handle it.
Because we went through it right before you did. Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, literally, you were making decisions.
Right.
Kind of as an owner here, because it was small business.
Right.
And then transition to your own now.
Yeah.
For me, it was kind of strange in the sense that as soon as I found AJ, he came in to interview, and I was like, dude, we don't need anybody. I need somebody that's like an expert in this one area. And well, the universe had different plans in store. He came on and made one of the biggest differences any employee's ever made around here. He really stepped up the level of output for our shipping department, helped organize things, and it was really clear he was a leader early on. So it was like almost no surprise to me when he came in and said, hey boss, business is going pretty well. I think we got to do our own thing. And we've been able to keep our relationship. Yep. And I think it's only gotten better since then.
Yeah, it's really definitely been really cool how it's progressed, and the amount of help that BuildASoil has given us as far as distribution and out there outreach, for the community and stuff. It's been huge. So we appreciate you guys.
I just wanted to be in a position where BuildASoil could be enough to support businesses like yours.
Right.
And it's like a dream of mine. So it's kind of two-way street
wins,
for
man.
sure.
It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, so you can tell we're catching up a little bit. We're just going to keep it casual. We're chatting about all this stuff. I can't believe it's already been, he left in September last year, he said. And sometimes I'm racking my mind going, did he leave 6 months ago, 5 years ago? Like, it's in a time warp when you're running a business and there's all this growth. And I know he's felt the same way. So let's just talk about it. Like, how was last year? I know that you had an outdoor grow going. The business was going crazy.
Yep.
What did that look like for you?
Hectic, we hired, we went from just me and my wife, when I quit here, and now we've got 5 employees. So we've hired 3 employees over the last 8 months. And so, I guess Benny was with us. Benny's been with us forever. I'm helping him make Kashi and stuff.
Was that scary?
Yeah, that's what, and I hired somebody a little late, because I was like just worried about making payroll.
Be a little late, right?
Right, and as you grow, the inventory dollars, it just becomes a whole nightmare, and it's But considering what we did this last season, it couldn't have gone better. With the building and then having a large grow to take care of, but then just dealing with all the crap with COVID, shortages on bottles, that kind of a thing. It's always something to deal with.
Extra curveball for sure. It was already hard enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
But all in all, we couldn't ask for a better year. It was great because I was concerned, because we're right on the edge of, can we support ourselves with this business if I left BuildASoil,
Yeah, of course.
And it ended up working out. So.
Well, I really respect you for doing that. I know personally how hard it is, not only to hire an employee. You could literally go buy like a brand new car instead of hiring an employee and just do all the work yourself, which there's only so much time in a day. But it's a big leap of faith. And then what if nobody orders tomorrow and you just hired an employee? Now you've promised them something you can't uphold. It's emotional.
The responsibility of it is stressful.
And then to quit?
Yeah.
Ooh, I know the business is going well, but it's like, now I'm living in pure, like, let's build the parachute after I jump off the cliff mode, instead of like this comfort mode where at least the check's coming in. So a lot of respect for doing it. And if you're watching, I really encourage you to start your own business too. Maybe it's something with BuildASoil, maybe you've got a product idea, maybe it's something else. And it doesn't have to be leaving your job, but the satisfaction that you can get from helping people with something that you care about and have passion for, I think that's why we mutually connect there, because BuildASoil has similar principles and it just feels good. And there's times where it's stressful. There's times where you're not sure if there's enough money or if you've made the right decision or if you're insane. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I know he wouldn't. And that's the type of products that we want to carry, is where there's family passion into it, good ingredients into it. And what we noticed is the marketing for the gardening industry was pretty much a lot of waste products with a lot of pretty labels from some big businesses that realized they had a good profit stream, until it became such an important hobby for so many people that are asking so many questions about quality, compost, and inputs. And so now, when fermenting, like when BuildASoil first started, there was only a few soil products on the market. You pretty much had to make your own from scratch. And then when fermenting became popular, Gil Carandang and KNF and Jadam, it was all you had to make it on your own. And there was only some like crazy guys that were charging an arm and a leg for some really weird ferment like classes, or maybe they were making something really special. Still hard to find. And so now fast forward, we've got some pretty easily accessible ferments, but you can still make them on your own, right? I mean, if you wanted to.
They're super easy to make on your own. We're open source on everything. So anybody that DMs us looking for recipes, a lot of it's on the website too, probably on yours as well. And they're simple to make, man. They're really not that difficult. Man, like something like on the insect frass, it's stinky, but once you get by that, man, this stuff is the bee's knees. And all these ferments here, I like to push them almost all the way up until the end. And that was, I think, one of the only things I watered in, like when I won that Home Growers Cup, was it was just top dressed as a Kashi, Craft One compost, and I pushed ferments until, I don't know, 11 weeks on that GMO and let it go another week after that.
Because we're not massively stacking nutrition.
No.
And part of why I feel like this works is, you know how like RO water has nothing in it, it doesn't quite work as well. But water with the natural minerals in it seems to be better. Now, obviously minerals from water all over are different, but it's almost like the plant gets used to this secondary source of a set amount. And it's like, oh, next watering I'll get a little calcium I can use or whatever. And it kind of like prepares itself mentally for that to be the routine. And I honestly think when you start using ferments, it's like a less is more, but you can use them more often in the sense because they're not so potent. And they help keep all of the food in constant motion in the soil. And I swear the plants like get used to the little bits of stuff that's in there, and they really thrive off of it, even when you're in the end, when you be flushing, so to speak, or always in no-till water only. This is more like, it's not just that NPK.
Oh yeah, and these are minimal NPKs and trace minerals. I think the biggest thing too is if you're using them once a week or something like that, or once every 10 days, you're constantly getting that inoculation of lactic acid bacteria too. And we're using multiple species of lacto.
Which one's your favorite?
Out of the ferments?
I know it's probably hard because you make them all.
The frass is great. Honestly, I probably use the alfalfa the most because I'm like, I don't know. There's something about alfalfa. And then when you time it right, and what I used to do actually was from Gil
Carandang, the Unconventional Farmer was his website.
So on there was some recipes for, basically just either kelp or alfalfa, just thrown in a bucket, letting it sit for a couple days with some EM1 or some other, home cultured lab or something like that. And I saw such great results with that. I was like, well, what if we just do, a 2-week fermentation? With high numbers, because we're using about a pound of alfalfa per gallon.
It's a lot. So that's the other thing I want to mention is that I've noticed one of the difference in your ferments, which might become a challenge for you, but it's still a positive for the customer. There's so much in it that they're 10 times stronger than most of the ferments I see out there as far as the odor, the clarity, the potency. Sometimes you'll see lactobacillus growing on it. And so I'm not going to say that you need to use less or more because of the potency, but it's like alive. Sometimes the bottle swells even a little bit. And the frass at home, where I started realizing that I really liked it, because you got to understand, I take a lot of products home. It's hard for me to like stone cold test only one product and see the difference. I've got so much going on. But when I started using this in my mom's, the reaction I got was so stellar and that like real vibrant new growth that I thought, oh, maybe I'm missing out. And I started using it in flour, you had suggested. Notice a big difference. I wish I would have used more on the 10x10 in this last series, but part of what you've got to understand when I'm doing the 10x10, I'm here at work. And we've got so much going on with the level of growth that sometimes I literally have 5 minutes left in the day to deal with the grow tent. And that's supposed to be proof that the BuildASoil way works, but sometimes it leaves me wishing I could really show you if I could fully dedicate every minute of the day to tending to it. So,
yeah.
But such is the way of the gardener, right?
It is, man, and especially as you get older, more responsibilities. You know, when I was 20, it was easy to just hang out in the garden all day, but now it's not. So we've got this Dandelion one as well, and we did a collab. As you can see, it's our label on the front, and then the fermented plant extracts, Sweet Should Taste Good crew on the back. And we did this together. We each collected dandelions from our own property, fermented them on location, and then mixed them together and bottled them up.
If you're gonna ferment your own dandelion, make sure you're collecting from an area that's not sprayed.
Right.
Their properties are fully organic, they don't spray anything, and they're actually really nutritious. A lot of health benefits to the dandelion. Some people learn that, they go in their lawn that the HOA takes care of, and you can get real sick. So just make sure you think of that.
Yep.
Another benefit of sourcing from you guys, sometimes you live in a city, it's just harder to get some of this plant material. I take it for granted living out here where we're at. So that's another reason we found people like buying them. The other reason is, kind of like herb, it's nice to have flavors. And if you've already fermented one thing and you know it's working well, sometimes you're like, well, I want the frass or something else. And I've noticed that. But what else do we have up here?
We got some of the Grow Cow. So that's amino acid chelated calcium. I was a big proponent of the calcium 25. And BuildASoil.
We should talk about that for a second. This is going to go too long if we talk about every story, but we'll try and keep it down. Now, he mentioned calcium 25. I'm not trying to interrupt him, but there's a whole story behind that. How did you hear about calcium 25? Probably the same way I did, right?
Yeah, through Rootwise.
And the big outdoor growers, they grow 99 plants in California, all 10 pounds plus. And Kevin doing his greenhouse with the 12, all 10 pounds plus. They had these tricks they would use in common. And a lot of them was similar loading of ingredients in the soil, similar size containers. But unanimously across the board, people were foliar spraying specialty amino acids and heavy amounts of calcium. And there became this secret calcium 25 that supposedly had triacontanol, but maybe not. And that's maybe why the alfalfa is so banger, because alfalfa has this waxy cuticle that has triacontanol in it. The inventor of that, who owns the patents on it for soapiness and other products, owned calcium 25 and said he didn't put any of his claim to fame in it. And he charged, but it says waxy material was added to it. So we all thought it was calcium and some growth hormone. And now I can tell, now I'm looking at the two together going, now I get it. It's kind of like that whole connection here with both.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so many old forum threads on that.
And there's no triacontanol in this, right?
No.
But there may be in here just because there's alfalfa.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, this is amino acid chelated, so it's a little bit different from calcium 25, but calcium 25 is no longer available.
And that was just calcium chloride.
Correct. Yep.
Supposedly.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there had to, I don't know, I think that there was some other carrier in there.
But this is fermented and chelated differently, correct?
Correct. And so yeah, they're using amino acids to chelate that calcium. And that was really the closest thing I could find that was going to be a direct replacement for that calcium 25, because one of the best things I know, which is that secret he was talking about, loading up the aminos, like a high nitrogen amino, following an application of the Grow Cow or the calcium 25. Yeah.
So you mean you do this first,
I typically
then
do
follow
the
aminos?
calcium first and then the aminos second. And I think you could probably flip-flop it either way, but that was kind of what I'd originally heard from Rootwise was calcium, then the aminos.
Now here's why, is even though this is amino chelated, the trick with amino chelating, if you look up the godfathers of this, like Albion and some of the books on amino chelation, what that means if you don't know what chelate is, essentially when you spray stuff on a plant, how do you know it's going to get taken into the plant? And so if it's chelated, it's kind of like a vitamin for a human. Do you want to just pee the vitamin out, or do you know it's actually going to absorb into your system? The trick with aminos is that they would bond with things and they would allow the plant to access it, and it was kind of a trick. And so calcium was thought to be no good as a foliar forever. It seems like the amino chelated ones really do work well. And so I thought, well, there's already the amino in here, but it's just enough to chelate the calcium. So following up with something with a pure amino would help give you all that energy maybe afterwards.
Yep. And I think that nitrogen calcium relationship.
What about morning or night? Morning, right?
You can actually spray that during the day. And calcium 25 was originally always 77 degrees plus. And we don't necessarily see that as such as a requirement.
But it says not above 86, really?
Correct. And so we're seeing uptake, with temperatures below 77. And we've had no issue spraying outside during the day, inside with the lights on, no problem. This is one product though I pretty much recommend to use by itself. You don't need a wetting agent, you don't need anything, just use it by itself.
And some products are best that way. They're formulated to have a certain reaction. In fact, somebody was asking me the other day why I would ever mix the Q with the, what was it, the Wizard Zymes. I'm like, because I like to, but I mean, right? Sometimes they tell you not to. So it's up to you. It's interesting, when he was working here, I just know this one alone, he paid for it personally and sent off like a dozen different tests of different formulations while he was working here, because he was so concerned about getting it right, making something that actually provided some value instead of just a random blend of crap on a label.
Right.
And then all the ingredients were listed on it, and so it became one of our better movers. We have a few different brands of Bokashi that we carry, but why don't you tell them why this one's slightly different? Because I feel like it's really unique as far as what Kashi is, what it does, and you know, what's in it.
So most Bokashis on the market, not all, but most of them are single grain. So it's either going to be rice bran, and you know, and that's it, or wheat bran, and that's it. Maybe with like a couple vitamins or some, you know, some small inputs. What we did was I found I liked the mix of rice and wheat. Because you get that larger surface area with the wheat bran, which I kind of like for, you know, getting that bloom action. I also, I'm obviously you can tell I like insect frass because we made a ferment out of it. We were the first ones to release a fermented insect frass. And we also, this Kashi blend is about 6% insect frass. So we put a lot of frass in there. We had a lot of minerals from the montmorillonite and gypsum.
So now we got mineral density, calcium, and we got some frass.
Right. And then we add soybean meal in there for a little bit extra push of nitrogen. The cool thing, and one of the differences about this product too, was that after those ingredients are fermented and dried, then we're going to take root-wise inoculated biochar and add that post-fermentation along with milled whole malted barley. I always found, like back in the day when I would use stuff from Terraganics or from Allen, I would always add whole malted barley with the Bokashi as a top dress.
That was like your thing.
Yeah, and I was like, dude, it just worked really, really well.
And I think why we were talking about back in the day, like, oh, why does it grow this white, whatever it is, mycelium, whatever you want to call it, this Santa's beard, like this fluffy cloud on top of your soil. And we noticed that malted barley would do it too. And so then I remember we were talking like, what if you did both? Like, would it go crazy?
Yeah.
And it does.
Yeah. And then with the root-wise in there, that was, you know, something I wanted to have, that diversity of microbes. And another thing we do is we use about 12 different species of lactic acid bacteria on this instead of just a single cultured one. But that root-wise in there, doing it post-fermentation because it's not going to survive a fermentation, you know, very few of the species in there. So that way we're able to try and maximize the diversity when it's being laid out, you know, as a top dress. So
I'm laughing to myself a little bit while he's explaining this. And the reason why I'm laughing is because I don't think he would knowingly ever do this again. Meaning more than one, in the sense that you start choosing when you make your first product as what is the best thing in the entire world, regardless of if I could ever make it twice. And then now it's popular now, and so now you're like, how do I buy the char, the soy, the this, the that, the frass, the ferment this, the put it in, the screen it, then put it in afterwards, where most people have one ingredient, it's all done. And I even talked to Terraganics, one of their new things is they're not drying it completely.
Okay.
And it's pretty cool, it's a good idea. It comes with a little bit of moisture, it saves them money, it might be better for the end consumer, but I know that fully dried for the longest shelf life, all this stuff, it's like a full process.
Yeah.
So on top of just making the Kashi, now you're like, this goes in before, this gets screened, this gets added in afterwards.
Oh yeah, it's a whole recipe.
Knowing what you know now, would you have set it out to be so complicated, or do you think you'd maybe
I
cheat
would
a little, make it
probably
more simple?
Honestly, I'd probably do it the same way because even though we're taking these extra steps, you know, adding the biochar and the whole malted and stuff, it's really not that long. And when we're doing 600 to 800 pounds, to add that in is 10, 15 minutes. So it's worth it.
Economies of scale work though. We're getting a little bigger. And so I've decided that we'll always make qualitative decisions here versus just scale. But I know that it gets a little bit harder. And so I just wanted to joke about that with him because it's just, I could see how other companies would maybe steer away from that when they realized how many steps it took for an employee or yourself to make it. And you're always like, man, margins are tough, hiring employees, maybe we could change a couple things.
Yeah.
But it's remained the same since day one. So.
And even though we're scaling and we're able to keep the quality there and not change our systems as far as how we're drying it, things like that, because we want that quality to stay the same, that handmade quality. One of the biggest hangups, honestly, is the packaging, you know, because we're using these organic cotton bags that are reusable, and that was our biggest thing, was everything needs to be...
A lot of customers of ours reuse these for tea bags.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can use them for, and we totally suggest that. But that's one of the biggest things, just getting these tags on, you know? It takes quite a while. We're double bagging it because we got to get this liner bag in there, which is a compostable bag, just to keep everything fresh.
But that's the essence of what I want to capture. I feel like that's our advantage in the marketplace right now, is as passionate mom and pop businesses, we can do stuff that none of these corporate companies would ever even want to breathe on, because logistically it's like, well, what, I'm going to order $200,000 of crap on 17 SKUs just to make one product that's a nightmare to make that ferments and is alive. But that's our advantage. That's the David versus Goliath, because the results work with it.
100%. And the last thing, I guess, now that we're talking about the Kashi, a lot of people have reached out. A lot of people want to make their own, do their own thing. They can't source this or they can't source that, but they want to copy the exact recipe. So what we did was release this home fermentation kit so you guys can ferment at home.
Now, would this save money? Or is this more like an experience?
More of an experience. It's priced exactly the same as if you were to buy 10 pounds of Kashi this way, as opposed to making it yourself. But it is that experience.
Then you still have a bucket, and it's an experience.
Yeah, you do get the bucket, which is helpful. And we've got all of our dry material in there. That's everything. And then I forgot the bag of biochar and whatever.
So you can do your post-second.
Yep, all that's added.
That'll come with it.
That comes with it, correct. And you get the microbes, and this has our special microbes in them too that we don't really sell or talk about.
Yep, the 12 different species or whatever.
So that's in there. All the molasses you need, airlock and everything, so you can do your fermentation right there.
And does this come with that already in it?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yep, it's all done. So all you got to do is add some water and stick it in.
How long does it take?
Directions, 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then some dry time. Depending on temps, 2 to 3 weeks plus dry time.
This is on sale for our Black Friday sale. If you're seeing this, it's live right now. It's 10% off. The rest of these are in a special 20% off collection. So go to the 20% off collection. You'll see those. Now, next Black Friday, it might be different. So if you're seeing this in the future, it is what it is. Hopefully you still got a lot of information about the content. That's really what I wanted to provide to you. We've got some other questions that I want to go through with AJ. But man, this was fun. I know that we used to have talks like this every day because we'd be geeking out on products, and we'd also be asking each other what he tried. He won the Home Growers Cup, and at that Home Growers Cup, there was another entry that had a similar cut or a similar strain. And so it was kind of cool to actually do, comparatively, it wasn't like, oh, it just won because that was the certain odor that the judges liked. There was two similar ones, and he did really well. And what I've come to find is that the growers that I know that are super into single source all the way to the hash, Jay Plant Speaker, Kooko, any of our buddies that are like into this, it's their passion. There seems to be a translation in the quality and the loudness of the final product when there's some ancient fermentation involved. And I'm not going to say like you have to use the alfalfa or you have to use the frass or you have to make your own, but it seems like the overall consensus, without a lack of exact data, is that, man, this makes a difference, and it's really positive on the hash. And what I mean by that is people that are looking for hash producing strains, they're really understanding the return they get off of that strain because it's so different. You can have a frosty plant that just does not put any hash out, and one that doesn't look as good and it just dumps. Typically the looks go with the results, but there is some really big differences. And so for what it's worth, it seems like the ancient art of fermenting and what that does for nutrient availability. The limiting factor in soil, if you have a small container, the nutrients can't keep up with your plant. When you get to a big container, the nutrients may not be able to keep up with your plant, but you can offset that with microbes, with fermentations, kind of like a kombucha for the gut, just keeping everything going all the time.
Like you said, the biggest factor I think on seeing that really increased amount of like terpene profiles or whatever it might translate to, it's not what flavor you pick, it's just the fact that you're going to use a ferment, period. You know, it doesn't matter which one you pick, adding any of them is really going to benefit the garden.
What about soil versus foliar? Do you ever foliar spray ferments? Do you add them to that, or you just kind of stick to the soil?
Grow Cow is pretty much a foliar. You can use it as a drench, but there's some special instructions that go with that. So, you know, typically for me, foliar, I'm so busy now, the only thing I foliar is like IPM-based stuff or the Grow Cow, and that's it. But a lot of guys have great success using those at a foliar. You can use it at a much lower rate. So, you know, if you're economical and you know you don't have much to spend and you need it to last a while, doing foliars is good. But when I use it on a drench, I push 4 ounces a gallon just because I make it. So it's
Well, and I know a lot of people too that they did compost teas for a long time, and they're a lot of work and a lot of cleaning afterwards. And if you get into the microscope work, it gets even weirder on the cleaning. And so I've noticed this trend where growers that use teas for a long time, they're now following the BuildASoil way, or they're asking more questions. We've all been doing it for a while. And they'll oftentimes, as their scale gets a little bit bigger or it's a big outdoor, they're like, man, this tea, I gotta brew a lot. It's a lot of work. What if I just go top dress every plant? And then you're like, man, I still wanna hit it with something. So you can just grab ferments, which can be made, even if you make them yourself, in advance. They don't have to be this game of 12 hours from now, I gotta be ready, you know? And so now I'm noticing top dressing has always worked, and it always works great. But there's this feeling like the speed of it may not be as fast as I want because maybe I missed the timing and I should have top dressed a couple weeks ago.
Right.
But now it's like, oh, okay, well, I got you.
Yep.
A little compost with my top dress, a little ferment in there instead of having to brew a tea, throw some root wise.
Yep.
And it's like I'm still getting a similar response.
Yeah.
The difference that I've noticed though is people have told me, seems like with teas they could accidentally boost growth too hard towards the end.
Okay.
Where when they're finishing with these,
Yeah.
they just get terp stack, not growth stack.
Right,
And we don't want to
right.
grow more veg, so to speak.
Right.
So-
Yep, 100%. Definitely.
So if you're watching this right now, we're probably somewhere in the middle of our Black Friday sale. The end of the sale is going to be on December 3rd. So if you're thinking about it right now, you have that many days until December 3rd to take advantage of the 20% off and the 10% off. Handmade, worth every penny, and we've got support. So if you email us, if you've got questions, we're here to answer them. Also, we did an episode on our YouTube series, how to use ferments. We discussed some of this there live in the tent, so you can check that one out. But we got a few questions from some of our viewers that were on the 10x10, and I feel like I'll just throw them your way.
Do it.
So Justin says, AJ was great. Loved hearing him. My question with living soil is, how is it different from indoor to outdoor?
When we're talking just living soil for outdoor, I mean, really, to me, it's container size.
Yeah.
You know, because you're outdoor, you're going to be able to get such a larger plant that you need to make sure that your nutrient can keep up with that fast growth, especially underneath the sun. It's
And
different.
a long season too.
Yep.
So you're not
100%.
talking about a young plant flipping a flower. It's going
Right,
to go
it's
through
not 30-day
teenager,
beds, yeah.
the
Right.
whole thing.
Right. Yeah. So for me, making sure that, and that's one time like when I really try and keep up on my top dressing, you know, and I push feeds a little bit more, but I try and make, you know, a huge soil volume. So like on mine outdoor this year's, my best plants, I had 2 plants would be in one 4x8 bed. And next year, I'm just going to do 1 plant
In a
in
whole
each
4x8?
in a 4x8. Yeah.
Wow, I could see doing the 4x4, like one on each side.
Right. But we had really good numbers. I mean, we pulled a lot.
It was in a bed though, 4x8 bed?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I like the beds outdoor, and these ones aren't fabric; they're wood based, just because we're really dry out here. So
Yeah, yeah.
better moisture retention. I feel like.
I saw a photo recently, they were overhead by a pretty good amount.
I think the tallest one was that halitosis number 2, and I think that was 12 or 13 feet.
We had a
And
mom from the halitosis last run when we ran them all, and it had that nose on it. He took one home and ran it, so it's pretty cool. Might
Yeah,
even
and
get some
I actually
rosin
just,
out of that.
I just washed them yesterday, dude. It's going in the freeze dryer tonight, so I'll have some for you. Oh, dude, and it's loud and greasy, dude.
Good.
All right, so back to this. Yeah, I would say soil volume. I mean, that's especially if you want to be out early and get a big plant. Now, if you're gonna start late season and you want to get something in the ground in the middle of July, it's not going to be as important.
Those are
But
the
if
tricks
you're-
I play. I'll throw a 30 gallon out, sometimes in like July instead of June.
Right.
And just let it do its thing, and it gets the exact right size and goes into flower.
Yep.
But I will say a lot of the BuildASoil way, a lot of the no-till way, a lot of what we were all discussing before the BuildASoil way was even a thing, was how we mimicked what worked for the big growers outdoors in living soil, how we brought that indoors. So you'll find very little difference, but I will say, I think you hit the nail on the head. When I talked to Kevin about the difference of what it really took to get a 10-pound plant, micronutrients, full season nutrition, making sure you were never behind it, because if you get behind it with a 10-pound plant, it's like you're done.
Yeah,
you're
not gonna catch
donezo. And you get diseases you'd never heard of, stuff that just doesn't happen. And what I liken it to is outdoor, full season, you're basically taking a person from 1 year old to 60 years old. Indoor, it's almost like they're at when they're 10 years old, we're like, okay, it's the end of your life,
like a
going to
dog's
flower.
life compared to like a human's
Yes,
life,
it
you know
is.
what I
And
mean?
there's
Like,
less
a lot
that can go
faster.
wrong in that really short flower time than in a full season. And so I've always felt like outdoor, full season growers, they have the most intuition, they have the most understanding because seasonal weather, all that. And a lot of that is just taken out when you're indoor. But because the one other thing that's different is like outdoor naturally has the higher humidity here, the sun goes down there, the VP heat changes on its own. So mimicking that indoor, it does take a little bit more thought, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's, conditions, pest pressure, I think is way tougher inside than it is outside typically, because you've got so many other natural pests outside or predators outside.
More of an ecosystem already.
Exactly. It's already established because we're outside. So, I think growing outside is easier than growing inside. There are some of those hiccups, but you just got to watch the weather every day.
And I prefer sun grown. Something about the sun and the round, the full vibration from the high versus it being so pointed, I think, when it's indoor.
Right.
And a lot of people agree with that, but I also think that for a while now, because hemp was so popular here in Western Colorado, a lot of us have just reverted to going indoor. And just as of recently, it's like you can kind of have some outdoor again, and it may not be so bad, so it's really refreshing. But when you're outdoor, the last few years when hemp was going crazy, there was pollen everywhere. There was russet mites. There was just problems that all the hemp growers brought with them, and now that they're gone, all of those problems have pretty much disappeared. There's some wild hemp that's just everywhere. The birds have dragged the seed around.
Yep.
I've noticed that no matter what I do, I still get a few seeds in the outdoor herb, and it seems like really a non-issue to me. But greenhouse growers have put like water walls or whatever, and they seem to have no issue anymore.
Wet walls are delaying
Yes.
flower. You know, if you've got heat in your greenhouse, keep
light
them in
dep.
veg. Yeah, light dep early. Yeah, there's options.
So that was we were on a question. Okay, that was the first one. Let's go to the second question. So Oki says, AJ, who are your top 5 online seed breeders? Help a guy out, thanks. So maybe stuff they can access if they're worried about buying seeds.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be the 5 best in the world, just ones that
Right.
come to your mind that you like.
I've always had really good luck with Archive.
Okay.
I really like Archive. I ran some Canorado for the first time this year. Yeah, I ran that frozen garlic marg. And I think I don't know if you tried that or not. I brought some dabs.
I think
place.
my
I don't know.
wife smoked it.
Yeah. I really like that.
What I've noticed a lot of times when you collect seeds, there's like 1 or 2 breeders that you track for a little while, you buy their seeds, and then you kind of move on, and then you're wondering, should I go buy more? Should I pop what I already have?
Bodie for sure.
Bodie for sure. I was waiting for you to say
100%.
Bodie.
Yeah,
So when he first started
100%.
working here, he had like every Bodie pack I'd ever heard of in the entire world, all being popped. Like.
Yep. And I think I'm sitting on a shit ton of old Sunshine Daydream F2s, and I'm thinking about giving them out or something.
That you made, right?
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yep.
In fact, Matt Davenport from Arlo's Consulting, now it's something else, but he'd sent me some like old Sunshine Daydream crosses of something else back in the day, and a lot of us were running those.
Yeah.
Really good
I was a big
seeds.
fan of that. There was a couple really nice finds.
So Bodie, Archive,
Canorado. Covert.
Covert.
I mean,
Yep.
man, that halitosis is good.
Yep. Run any of all kids stuff?
Oh yeah.
You did some work with him, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I made the mail that he used in the Branson's Royal Revenge. I helped him make the mail. I threw the.
I didn't know how full circle it came. I know Kevin's involved in that a little bit because there was a cut or something.
Yeah, it was his seed stock that was the Royal, and Branson found it.
Yep.
And so that was the female, and then
That's why it's Branson's Royal. That's great. I love it.
Yep. And then we did some pollen chucking. He gave me some Lauren's Light male pollen, and then I threw that on like the GMO, some Field Trip from Bodie, stuff like that. And so that's where that male came from, was that GMO Lauren's Light, and then into the Royal. So yeah, and dude, that Branson's beautiful back there, dude.
And what I've found is there's a lot of people that email me, where do I buy seeds in the US? Like, dude, there's so many good seed banks now. When I first started, it was like, hide it in a t-shirt or some weird gift from overseas.
Yep.
And they always jacked your seeds out of the f***ing gift.
Yep.
And then you'd have to order again, and it was like, am I gonna get arrested? You get a letter, it was like, we took your seeds.
Yeah.
I think the reason why they took them is because they wouldn't call them cannabis seeds. And if the United States got seeds, it needed to describe what it was. They could determine if it was an illegal crop that would like cause pest problems or something.
Right.
So they would just take them, nobody would get in trouble, but it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
If you ask around, there's a number of good people that have seeds available.
Bodie's always a great starting point because the price point, you know, they're 65, 70 bucks a pack. You're not gonna be paying $300 a pack or something like that.
A lot of guys will validate that Bodie's legit.
Yeah.
Like there's just, people have found some really good shit in this
Yeah,
pack.
he's got some heat, man.
So,
Definitely.
all right, let's go to the next one. BB says, AJ, thanks for your wealth of knowledge. Question is, I have been using 5 and 7 gallon bags,
Okay.
trying to grow all organic. What do you suggest I use if I want to switch to no-till? I also recently bought an earth box and I filled it with 3.0 soil from BuildASoil, and I have a 3x5 tent and a 3x3 tent.
I mean, there's a few options there. If you want to do no-till, you know, obviously that can be done in the earth box. You're showing it right now, and they tend to have enough juice. Although it looks like those 30s are.
Yeah, no, I like, if I'm gonna be romantic about it, I like a big bed of soil or a large container. It feels more farm to me. It feels more no-till of what I dream about. The earth box has a lot of horsepower, but I'm always like, man, 2 or 3 cycles, I'm gonna have to dump it. Like it's pure worm bin at that point, the way it's designed. So for what that's worth, that might be a consideration. If you wanna go like 40 cycles deep and really go long-term on this no-till thing, I think a large container of soil will be well, but what in a 3x3 tent, I mean,
Well, I think if you did like a veg in the 3x3 and 3 gallon or 5 gallon, and then you put like a 2x4 grassroots tent in the 3x5, or I'm sorry, a bed in the tent.
and just do low-till where you like dig out enough for the 3 gallon transplant.
Correct. Yeah. Something like that may work. I mean, because it's a fairly small space to do no-till, and if you, depending on what you want, you know, so if you're gonna have, if you just want 1 or 2 plants, you know, you could just throw a 45 gallon in that 3x5 or a couple of those in there.
Personal choice.
You know, if you're looking to, you know, have just one big volume of soil, those beds work really well. But
And I think if you think about it as total soil in a canopy in a 3x5, you could easily do like 6 15 gallon containers, and that would be like 90 gallons.
Yep.
So that's still a lot of soil in there, and the 15s would probably fit on the 3 wide, and they would definitely fit 3 of them in the 5 foot wide.
Yep.
So max that out is one of the things that I consider, and I like the individual containers or the bed so long as I can have flavors. And in a tent like that, where everything's tight, you'll probably want to put a screen in to manage the one taller plant versus the shorter ones, so that you have that control.
Yep.
So maybe think about that. But 5 and 7 gallon bags, could you just straight up use those anyways in the 3x5 and maybe flip them earlier, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely the 7s. Yeah. Especially when you hunt. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to hunt and you need to pop a good amount of gear, 7s I think are great because you can fit quite a few flavors in. You can select what you want, but those are pretty much dump. After the end of the cycle, you got to dump and re-mend, and you're not going to be really doing no-till.
It's not as no-till.
Right, and if you really wanted to do no-till from start to finish, like plugging clones in and letting them go all the way through, so like they're no-till the whole time, and in that large volume, just get one more tent, Yeah. These two, the 3x3 and the 3x5 can be your flowers from clone to finish, and then have another little tent for moms and cuts. Yep. And then you can just plug right in and keep those as flowering tents, something like that.
I found even after that, like if you're in confined space, the next tent you buy that you can rotate through storage of bins and stuff is a dry tent or somewhere to hang dry where the environment's right. And so while this turns into like a entry-level hobby for some people, a lot of times it tugs at you, and all of a sudden that one little 2x2 turns into 3 or 4 tents. And so don't get scared by that, but the way that I think running 7 gallon bags or 5 gallons, the one thing that he mentioned that makes a lot of sense to me is they're kind of done when you're done. They're not as no-tillable. I won't say it's not possible, but I would say that I would see that wall-to-wall with 7s, plug your clone in and flip to flower within like 3 to 5 days, you might be able to no-till it. Right. But if you let that veg for a while, it's going to turn into a root ball, and it's going to be a lot harder to no-till. Yeah. So I hope that makes sense. The other thing that you can do in a 5 and 7 gallon by flipping early is you can leverage some more of these water-soluble type products, foliar sprays, ferments, like we did in our 5 gallon section, and it should help you get all the way to the end. Yeah. So, all right, next one. DK says, AJ takes over and all the plants herm. Laugh out loud, take a break, pal. Or no, tough break, pal. That actually was hard because you had to call me like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Well, we got to be honest.
So it looks like there's some pollen flying in here because all the hairs were turning. And I was like, this is like week 3, dude. Yeah. Yeah, it's a shit job, but somebody had to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And he was honest. He could have just kind of avoided it until I got back, but he called and said, what do you want to do?
Yep. And yeah, it just ended up being it was a light leak in the back of the tent. It got fixed, I think, within a few days, and the crop ended up being fine. I think you guys probably just found a couple seeds, maybe even if any.
Like the lowers from the early stuff that started because it didn't fly later.
But that's something to look out for because shit happens, even if you've got a light leak or a timer's off or something like that, you really got to pay attention because that's how we found it was through the discoloration of the hairs.
Even outdoors. Sometimes I'll throw a plant out late and I'm like, yeah, it's good, let's put it right there. And then 10 days later, I'm like, oh, there's a light here in the house. It's shining
right through the window.
Right on that plant. In fact, I had a plant on my old house that the light was on this side and it fasciated and the front of the plant was good, but the back where it was hitting light got fat stem and mohawked on it and stuff. It was really weird. So there's always something that can happen. If it's a lifestyle, you kind of take it as it goes and you start to learn all of the different ways that you can make it easier on yourself. And part of the reason I don't like the 5 or 7, and I think you'll agree, is even if I'm pheno hunting, it's like, gosh, that's a lot of work. At the end of the night, I come in, I'm like, I gotta go water all these 5 gallons and make sure they're all perfect, and it stresses you out.
And then you gotta start incorporating feeds, and then depending on the size of your res, you gotta refill it a couple times, add a nutrient, and it just becomes this whole thing.
Because they're not on the same spot.
Yep, it just becomes a whole thing. So it's just, large beds of soil, dude. I've grown every way, and this is the way.
Well, it wasn't really an issue that we had the problems with AJ there, and it certainly wasn't his fault. We were able to remedy it, and just like any good grower, he came into something that wasn't even his grow and was able to spot a problem immediately, overcome it, and that's what it takes. And so as you learn these processes, there's no substitute for spending a little time in your garden, making sure that you're looking for problems, identifying before they become an issue. And what's so neat is you find that mirrors life, and it teaches you about the responsibility of life, making sure that you're not growing any dragons under the rug and feeding them before they get too big and eat you alive. You have to be tending to what's important, and you can't lie to yourself when it's the garden. It's like 3 days later, and you can only put it off for so long. So I appreciate you guys for watching. I think we've talked a lot more than I anticipated about ferments and life in general. So
for sure.
Thanks for coming down, man.
Thanks for having me, dude. Appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Well, if you're watching this now, we really appreciate you. That means you stuck with it this entire episode, and we meant for it to be like 5 or 10 minutes. And when we get together, we just like to talk. So we appreciate you sticking it out. If you've got more questions for AJ, put him on this video. He's local, he's a homie. I'm sure he'll jump in here. I'll help answer him on the YouTube. But like always, subscribe, tell your homies about it, make some of your own ferments, report back to us, tell us how you do, And of course, take advantage of this sale. It's like a one-time-a-year thing that Black Friday comes around. And if you're watching this outside of Black Friday, thanks again for watching the whole time. Still subscribe, still like, still tell your homies, get ready for next Black Friday. Till then, I'll see you guys on the next one.